It's test 65, passage 3, question 19. The relationship between the ways in which Canadian and US common law and classical Roman law treat blackmail, as described in the passages, is most analogous to the relationship between which one of the following pairs. If you struggled with this question, I guarantee you went into the answer choices right away. It's not that hard of a question. The first step here is to understand the relationship between Canadian and US common law blackmail compared to ancient Roman law blackmail. In ancient Roman law, there was no problem with blackmail. Ancient Roman law had its own issues, obviously, but their treatment of blackmail, they didn't even have blackmail because you just weren't allowed to divulge damaging information unless you had a privilege. Under US and Canadian common law, we have free speech, which means you are allowed to divulge basically any information you want. And you're also allowed to ask for money. But the problem with blackmail is that when you combine those two things together, now you're using a third party as leverage for your own benefit. And that's why, according to the author of Passage A, that's why it's illegal under US and Canadian common law. So again, we have special treatment under US and Canadian law because of free speech. Under Roman law, classical Roman law, you didn't even have a blackmail issue because you just weren't allowed to divulge the information to begin with. So understanding that relationship, now I'm going to go into the answer choices looking for a similar relationship. A says, one country legally requires anyone working as a carpenter to be licensed and insured. Another country has no such requirement. I mean, it's analogous only to the extent that in one country there is a law against it and in the other country there's no law. But that's actually not even quite right, because under classical Roman law, blackmail was prohibited. It just was prohibited without a specific reference to blackmail. It was prohibited under a broader restriction. A just doesn't even have any restriction at all, which just makes it different. B, one country makes it illegal to use cell phones on trains. Another country makes it illegal to use cell phones on both trains and buses. You know, I'm just not seeing an analogy there. Both countries have the exact same law against using cell phones on trains. One of the countries has an additional law about buses. I don't see how that's analogous. C, one country legally allows many income tax deductions and exemptions. Another country legally allows relatively few deductions and exemptions. That's a difference in the law, but it's not... Think about what happened. US and Canadian common law have specific restrictions against blackmail. Classical Roman law did not have a specific restriction against blackmail, but blackmail was still restricted via another mechanism, which was basically just the restriction on speech. So I don't see anything analogous in C either. C seems like a different level of restriction. I'm looking for the same level of restriction, but it's through different mechanisms. D, one country makes it illegal for felons to own guns. Another country has no such ban because it makes gun ownership illegal for everyone but police and the military. That's a perfect answer. US and Canadian law are like making it illegal for felons to own guns. They have a specific blackmail restriction. It's illegal to do this thing. Felon with a gun or doing blackmail, that's illegal. Classical Roman law is like having no ban on blackmail because it makes gun ownership illegal for everyone but police and the military. We're doing the same thing. In both cases, we are banning felons from having guns. In one case, we're doing it explicitly, and in the other case, we're just making it illegal for anybody to have a gun, except for some exceptions, which is parallel to the privilege of divulging damaging information analysis that happened under classical Roman law. It's an analogous situation, so that's our answer. E says, one country makes it illegal to drive motorcycles with racing-grade engines on its roads. Another country legally permits such motorcycles. but fines you if you blah, blah, blah. No, no, no. Blackmail was illegal under classical Roman law because it was illegal to divulge damaging information. Blackmail is illegal under Canadian and US common law because there's a specific prohibition against blackmail. E is like, well, it's legal in one place and illegal in another place. That's not analogous at all. The answer here is D, because it's the only one that matches the idea that we're going to prohibit blackmail in both places, but we're going to use completely different mechanisms in those places.